I don't sit down to write for someone else, and specifically, I let art drive the bus.
Every time I see a woman on a billboard sign, I think about you, saying drink this beer and you'll be mine. I think about you when an actress on a movie screen plays Lolita in some old man's dream. It doesn't matter who she is, I think about you. When I see a pretty woman walking down the street, I think about you. Men look her up and down like she's some kind of treat. I think about you. She wouldn't dare talk to a stranger, always has to be aware of the danger. Doesn't matter who she is, I think about you. 8 years old, big brown eyes and a heart of gold. When I look at this world, I think about you, and I can't help but see that every woman used to be somebody's little girl. I think about you. Think about you. Every time I hear people say it's never gonna change, I think about you. Like it's some kind of joke, some kind of game. I think about you. When I see a woman on the news who didn't ask to be abandoned or abused, it doesn't matter who she is, I think about you. 8 years old, big brown eyes and a heart of gold. When I look at this world, I think about you, and I can't help but see that every woman used to be somebody's little girl. I think about you. I think about you. I think about you.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for coming today.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, as a songwriter, what's different about writing for someone else as opposed to just putting out your own solo thing?
Well, I think when you're a singer-songwriter and most of what you're writing is directed, or all of it, at you as an artist, you're going to write a certain kind of song that you're willing to sing.
Yeah.
Or that you're able to sing, if you will. And as what I call myself as a songwriter slash singer, instead of a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
I love to sing, but about 25 years ago, I switched gears and became a songwriter first.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is that through collaboration and through just having an open-mindedness about it, you're willing to write a song that you would never sing. So like a good example, if you know who Delbert McClinton is.
Sure.
I wrote a blues tune once that he recorded with an 18-piece horn section that I love, but as a writer,
Yes.
but I would never sing it in a million years because I wouldn't do it justice.
You're really pumping it out, right?
Yeah, I just don't have that kind of, those pipes, that he has. Or writing a song for a woman to sing. So let's say the gender is specific. Well, I'm probably not going to sing that song, but I still can write it,
It's actually kind of fun. It lets your fantasy roam even farther.
Absolutely.
Hit upper registers that you can never get to.
Well, that's another thing. I meet a lot of starting out songwriters who I say, why don't you go up to that note? It seems like a big... I can't hit that note. I go, why is that relevant?
Yeah, it doesn't
To
matter.
me, as a writer, it's like I want to sing the note that, or write the note that it wants to be. And if I can no longer sing it, I'll hire a demo singer to do it, or hopefully find an artist. There's plenty of people that are recording artists that have a little bit more wealth than I do in terms of their range and that kind of thing.
Yeah. How do you still emotionally connect with something that you're writing for someone else? Do you have to try to be like them as you're writing,
Well,
think like them?
I think that's the secret, is not to do that. In other words, I have an old saying that you can mix commerce and art, but let's not let the commerce poison the art. I don't sit down to write for someone else, and specifically, I let art drive the bus. I start thinking about who could record one of my songs after I've written it.
Really?
Yeah, because if I think about it during, then I'm going to let commerce drive the bus and say, oh, so-and-so wouldn't say that. Now, the only exception to that is when I'm writing with an artist, which is not always the case. Sometimes I'm just writing with another songwriter, and we're just trying to create a song that we feel really good about that hopefully an artist will pick up and record. If I'm writing with an artist, well, then obviously you have some reason to just try and keep that song and that effort on task for what that artist would say. Actually, it's one of my least favorite things to do unless I love that artist.
It's almost like you're being a doctor coming in to adjust what they're bringing to the table. Is that how that works?
Yeah, or maybe to help them say what they're really trying to say because they don't know exactly how to do it, you know?
Can you think of an example that you'd like to give of an artist that you collaborated with where a song came out nicely?
Sure, like I write with a woman named Julia Sinclair. She's known these days as just Sinclair, who's an amazing new artist and a young woman, so she's 24. And you know, there's somebody who, first of all, writing with a woman and writing with somebody that young.
That's a real different sensibility.
Well, but look at the opportunity it is too.
Yeah.
You know, is to be part of a song that is written by somebody that's really at a different point in life than you are, but you can bring your wisdom about the overall emotion of it to that effort. So in the case of Julia, for instance, it was kind of funny. She said to me, have you ever heard the expression, this too shall pass? And she said it as if I hadn't, you know, like my grandmother used to say that, you know what I mean? And we wrote a song called This Too Shall Pass, but we did it in a way that I would have never done it with hardly any other co-writers I can think of. She made it hers, but it's not like it's not mine.
Who came up with the bones of it first?
We kind of did it together. But there was an interesting moment about that in terms of writing songs that are directed at another artist. You know, I'm always very into painting pictures. And so if you think about it this way, this too shall pass. If I wrote that song with Alan Chamblin, let's say, or somebody else or by myself, the first thing the chorus is, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. I don't know when, but I do know that this too shall pass. The first thing that I would think I would need to figure out for the verses would be, what is this?
What's going to pass? Yeah.
What is it? And how can we describe this situation that we have the belief that it will pass?
And the things you would naturally go to as a fully grown man would be different than a 24-year-old woman.
Yeah.
Right? So how did you come up with a compromise?
And in terms of like how she wanted to approach it, the first thing she said to me was, okay, I don't care what we do for sure, but I don't want to say what the this is.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's tricky.
And I was like, like my whole how are we going to write it then? You know, seriously. And yet we never said what it was. The lyric, just a little bit of it is, these days it's hard to get up. Some doors are better left shut. Maybe I'm thinking too much these days. I don't go out with my friends. I don't need someone asking. A courtesy, how have you been these days? I want to get it right, but I keep on getting it wrong. I'm hoping you were right last night on the telephone. This too shall pass. This too shall. So the whole lyric becomes more about how you feel because you're going through something than describing what you're going through.
It's the reaction to the thing that.
But it's not how I'd write it on my own. But for her as an artist, that's the mystique of what she does. She doesn't want it to be too specific.
No, that's actually clever because it lets you build in whatever you want to build into it as you're listening to it. Makes it a little more
Exactly.
universal.
It's way more of the approach is way more letting the listener fill in their own blanks.
Oh, and that's wonderful. That's a hallmark of great songs. You bring to it what you want to bring to it as you listen to it.
Sure. Well, I do believe that you can use a specific example, though, and paint pictures within that example, and people can still transcend that and plug in their own specifics.
Yes.
I have to believe that that's possible.
Oh, of
So
course.
this was a little different for me, though, to let the whole thing be left to the imagination.
Do you still feel an ownership of an emotional ownership in that song once you've collaborated like that?
Sure, because I got into being able to do this her way. Because in this case, she's the artist. So it was going to be her way or no way.
Right.
Kind of thing. So if I wanted to, pursue this song, this was how she wanted to do it, and I had to respect that. Or I could have just respectfully said, I don't think I could do that.
Move on to another song.
Just to, I don't know, not to belabor the point, but the second verse has some imagery, but it still sticks with that not defining what the this is. The second verse is, slow dancing with my regret. Guess I'm not over it yet. Out of the rain, but still wet these days. I'm watching too much TV. It's keeping me company. I'm not where I thought I'd be these days. So again, it's all about the place you're in, not
the
why you
aftermath.
got there.
Yeah, it's the aftermath of the thing but everyone can relate to the idea.
Well, in the notion in the chorus of I don't know when, but I do know that, we addressed a bit into the evolution that, you're coming out of it.
Yeah.
You're out of the rain, but you're still wet.
A little hope.
A little hope, which I actually always like to build into my song.
You sure do, which is you slide in even when you're collaborating with someone else. You seem to slide in a little bit of humanity, little message of
Well, and that's a good example of it would be hard for me to write with an artist who was super dark. Like, let's go dark and stay there. I think I'd have a hard time giving it my best shot to do that. Because when I go dark, I want to let's turn the hope screw, I call it.
Sure. Yeah, just like you. I don't think you would have a really great time writing with someone who's writing just bubblegum all the time.
Oh, no.
No. Now, when you wrote for your hit for Tim McGraw, what did you have in mind when you were writing that song?
Well, here again, that's called Grown Men Don't Cry.
Beautiful
and
song.
Tim actually told me that the main reason he cut that song was the second verse. Because without going into the whole story, Tim McGraw grew up not knowing his dad was Tug McGraw.
Famously so, yeah.
And then he found out when he was 13, 14 years old. Well, the second verse of that song is not about that. It's about my dad, losing my dad when he was 53. And the line that says, I put a rose on his grave and I talked to the wind, was me standing in Queens, New York at his gravesite, my dad's, and talking to the wind. The conversation we were always going to have to mend fences, we didn't get to have because he suddenly had a heart attack and was gone. Well, that's a great example where Tim McGraw somehow emotionally took that thing that I wrote honestly. I wrote it with a guy named Tom Douglas, but that we wrote honestly about my dad as the inspiration, and yet all it did was speak to him, Tim, emotionally about his dad. And I guess my point to other songwriters would be, if I read People magazine or something and said, look, Tim McGraw grew up, he didn't know it was his dad. Let's write about that. I don't think I'd pull it off as honestly as going to the well of my dad,
Because songwriting
using
is
that.
really an alchemy of emotion,
Absolutely.
and tact, and skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's now. After writing such a personal part of a song, how does it feel to have someone else sing it and make it their own? Do you feel robbed? Do you feel proud? What's the emotion?
Well, I
there?
think definitely not robbed, because Tim McGraw can sing all my songs as far as I'm
He's a
concerned.
terrific singer.
And he sells a lot of records too.
Yeah.
But you know, he made it his own. You know, so I knew he related to the second verse because of the dad thing. The third verse, he's married to Faith Hill. They have 3 girls. You know, I'll give you an example that happened in that song, by the way, where we wrote, "It's up the stairs, and my little boy says I haven't had my story yet."
Yeah.
In the third verse. And Tim McGraw, to his credit, actually called the publishing company office and said, "I'd like you to check with the writers. I'm going to record Grown Men Don't Cry. I'd like to find out if it was okay with them if I change it to my little girl."
So he could
because
make
I
it
have
very
3
personal.
little girls,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
First of all, I was amazed that he even called about that because most artists, when people ask me, do artists ever change things? Yes, they do. Do they ask permission? No, they usually don't. So to ask permission for such a little change that wasn't like a big writing change, it was just the gender of the kid, I was shocked, you know.
That seems to show that he really connected.
Well, and that he
deeply with
really
that
cares
song.
about song. For a guy who doesn't really write songs, I think he's written 1 or 2. He really cares about songwriters and the fact that they provide a big part of what he does and his success. What's a singer without a song?
Nothing.
To me, an artist who does a song that someone else wrote ought to deliver it as if they wrote it.
Yeah, you have to get inside it and then bring it out.
And those are the true artists to me that, although they might not have written the song, they are artists, they're not just singers. So they bring something to the table with every song that they sing to make it authentic for them.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being here today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm moving to Mars. Yeah, I think I'd like to try me out a life in the stars. My friends all say I need a place to air out my heart. So I'm moving to Mars. You know, this life has been crazy. Sometimes I think I'm not really here. Every time I turn around